Romeo Utima immigrated to the United States of America at the youthful age of 24 in search of opportunity. By the time he was 46, he had become one of the first Nigerians to achieve the rank of captain in the Merchant Marines. Equipped with knowledge and skill, he moved back to Nigeria and created one of the most successful privatized coastal security companies the nation had ever seen. His company, Global West, employed well over 200 people, partnered with several government entities, and revolutionized the maritime safety industry on the West African coast. This is his story.
My name is Kevin Aibitorofa Itima. Aibitorofa means no matter what you do, you can't please everybody. I own two real estate investment companies in the US, and I'm also an author. Romeo was my father.
Romeo is a very intelligent and he's a very good guy. He's my brother-in-law. We all came from the same country, came from the same area. So he's a good man.
First of all, when I met him and talking with him, he was a strong person. He was a young man and he had a lot going on. And he was a leader. And when he talked to you, he made a lot of sense. And he was a well-likable person.
He was an excellent boat handler and a very good captain of his boat. So that we had all that in common, which was quite nice.
It came as a shock, very rude shock, an interruption of the revolution. The death of Romeo is an interruption of the revolution that he represents.
Nigeria is a West African country with a landmass of 356,667 square miles. That's just bigger than the size of Texas. The approximate population is 174 million, which is ranked 7th in the world. Even more impressive than the sheer size and population are the 371 different tribes that inhabit its borders. Yet and still, the numbers simply don't do justice to who and what this country is made up of. The vibrant culture is far richer than the oil pulled from its soil. My father, Captain Romeo Utima, was born in Delta State, Nigeria, in the rural Escravos area, into circumstances that should have solidified his fate of living out a harsh life. After all, he was the youngest of 6 children. His father died before he could even speak, and he was from a place so remote that time seemed to stand still. The year was 1959, but it might as well have been 1902, as the lack of basic human necessities available in his village were painfully obvious. Even with despair waking them up and putting them to bed, people found ways to make it work. As Romeo grew, he found people throughout the community that would sponsor his inquisitive nature and help fund his way through his early years of school. People may not have had much, but those who had anything to spare would give freely.
Romeo was the last born of 6 children. And at the time I know him and at Escravos, he used to be like a big brother to everybody. And he, with my older brothers, they hang out, they go out, party, drink, have good time, fun. And they will come home, I cook for them and they eat, and then I wash their clothes and iron, do things for them.
And I met him in the Gulf of Mexico. He was working on a boat and I was a mooring master. And we had a lot in common. I'd worked in Nigeria before and worked for some companies he knew and some companies he didn't know. And he told me about how he grew up in the village in Nigeria. He now lived in Houston, and we talked a lot about what we did, where we'd been, who we knew, and that's how we got to know each other.
Our relationship was very close. I mean, the closest it had ever been, because we could relate on so many levels now. I think when I was younger, because he really didn't grow up with his father, it was kind of hard for him to relate to like a little kid. Even though we had fun and we played around and stuff like that, but it was kind of hard to really relate to me because one, I was growing up in a different culture. Two, I was really young. But once I got older, I could really relate to my father. He would really, we'd have some very deep conversations. And before that, he sent me to live in Nigeria for 2 years. And he would always tell me that me being sent to Nigeria wasn't a punishment, even though I did all kind of crazy stuff before, got into a lot of trouble. But he told me he sent me here for those years so that I could know where I came from. So that if anything ever happened to him or my mother, I could always come back here without any problems or any issues. I know my family, I know my country. And, I really appreciate him for that.
Like all the world's great natural resource booms, the discovery of crude oil in Nigeria's Delta region brought in a sudden influx of foreigners barging in to stake their claim at the riches flowing beneath the surface. This created an incredible need for local guides, known as pilots, who could accurately navigate through the confusing and often treacherous waterways. This newfound need spurred an economic boost to a region that previously could only rely on fish as its gross domestic product. Accompanying this craze was the introduction of a culture to a new world that now sat at its shores. The oil boom changed more than just economics in the region. It gave people a glimpse into a new way of life, and for Romeo, opportunity was calling. It was truly a new day in the Delta. However, this newfound gift had a steep price.
Baramatu, growing up there as a child, it's an environment, a local environment, more made up of more mangrove woods, and our major occupation is fishing, and our life there most time depend on the fishing. We catch fish, we sell to traders, we buy foods, and it goes round. So our main occupation is fishing.
For some good period of time since creation, Nigeria depends largely on oil, and this oil is obtainable largely from my area. All my communities are surrounded with oil flow stations, oil infrastructure, which activities endanger their environment, which activities constitute despoliation to their livelihood. And the benefits that accrue from the oil activities are controlled, managed by the government.
The negative effect can never be measured. As it appears in papers and newspapers every day, the land is gone. You cannot, the proper fishing that normally our people used to go to fishing, maybe they got, good fish to sell. But these days, because of the normal oil, spillage here and there, all the creeks are affected. So it actually reduced the fishing, to nothing, and the land too, they're all affected. So life is terrible. It's terrible.
The Ijaw village is a dynamic blend of wisdom, spirituality, beauty, and tenacity. It's hard to say why these people decided to settle on these tiny islands in the delta of Nigeria, but one thing is for certain, they've been able to withstand the test of time. Each and every face contains a riveting story of life. It really does take a village to create a sustainable community. There may not be a large amount of commerce here, but there is a definite sense of family and togetherness.
When you go. Me, I not put on me. This one, I know belong. So, come over see near me. So, by me, Baba, do go clean. I'm not there, but like, pretty far. Yeah. Chief. No, what I'm not to am. My one brother, Devil one of us. You do not know come on. Well, my son, that is all of me. I got them. Oh, I'm using over. See, rather than a shopper. Don't trouble more. If you are trouble, my trouble. The crowd also what I call him. Not about the good farm. Yeah, I don't.
In the Ijo culture, when a guest arrives at a household, they come bearing gifts. Usually drinks, food, money, or a combination of all three. A spokesperson is chosen to bless the gifts and the host for receiving them. It is a way of not only showing respect, but bringing everyone together. Once the prayer is done, everyone either breaks bread or pops open a drink and enjoys each other's company. It's an almost perfect way to begin those moments with friends and family. From the beginning of the 20th century into the early 1920s, roughly 14.5 million immigrants entered the United States, the largest influx that had ever been recorded. Only the mighty earth-shifting occurrence of World War I was able to slow the tide of hopeful humans venturing to the land of opportunity. By the time the war was over, the quiet rumblings of fear from the masses turned into action. The era of openly welcoming everyone from every corner of the globe was over. In 1921 and 1924, new immigration acts were put into place and a quota system was constructed. Each nation was given a number of people allowed into this country based on past census information, dramatically decreasing the amount of people allowed in. The door was not completely closed, but for countries that were not represented in this nation in the early 20th century, it was left open just a crack, enough to see the shine of something brilliant, but not wide enough to allow more than a select few a chance to partake in it.
United States is a land of opportunity. I came to this country to go to school. And the tropical weather is just like Nigeria, so I decided to settle down in Houston, Texas.
The process was a very long process. The paperwork, embassy, and back and forward going to the embassy to apply for visa to be able to come into the United States. And it was a long process, but at the end, I get approved for visa to come, so I was very happy. I was excited.
The whole exercise, to my experience then, I looked at it that it was extremely difficult to obtain visa to travel either to America or to the European country. And not just being difficult, it seems the whole process, the way they were going about it, not just the denial that really frustrates me. For you to book appointment too was very, very difficult.
Now we're going in Valdi into the bed. As you can see, that's a narrow channel there forward, covered by snow hills. That's the glacier there. That's where we're going in. This is the channel Valde. We'll be there within next 3 hours. Double. It's very cool out to stay making any kind of recording. When I got a little bit older, I remember distinctively my dad was, I think I was around 12 or 11, and my dad was studying to take his captain's license in the Gulf of Mexico. And the whole time he was studying, I was like, there's no way that this guy is ever gonna pass this test. And he used to have like charts and all kind of books, and I mean, he was up all night studying for months and months and months. And one day he came home and he was like, I passed. I'm a captain now. And from that moment forward, I saw my dad in a different light, because for the first time in my life, I had saw him set a goal, work hard for it, and then actually obtain it right in front of my eyes. Even though people had told me that he had done things like that before, I never really believed it because I never saw it myself.
Romeo made a name for himself as one of the youngest and most gifted pilots in the Delta. Though his adventurous spirit had already carried him farther away from his home than most had ever dreamed, he wasn't satisfied. He didn't want to just visit foreign lands, he wanted something more. This meant a journey to the United States of America, where his goal wasn't only to partake in the dream, but also bring it back and transform his home into a place where his people could thrive. It didn't take him long to realize that this dream people spoke of was much harder to obtain than most let on, but that didn't stop him. The time spent working odd jobs and earning a meager income did not dampen his entrepreneurial spirits. Aside from cleaning kitchens, he tried everything from selling used clothes, painting cars, and even shrimping in Louisiana. If it meant him being his own boss, he'd give it a try. However, with each attempt, he became a little wiser and even more determined. He would soon hone in on his natural talents and experiences, which led him in the direction of becoming a merchant marine. He had finally found an occupation in which he had a natural talent and passion for.
He was among the youngest people to acquire respectable credentials of pilotage. He was among his mates, he was a champion. Before we knew it, he said that was not enough. He had to leave Escravos. He left for Lagos. And while in Lagos, most of our people sojourned to Lagos, then the capital of Nigeria, to do this seaman job. Your father went there and did it with a difference. Before he knew it, he felt he wanted more knowledge to be able to deliver, to make his people be the champion, to make his people have a taste of what God has bestowed them. Before we knew it, he decided to leave this country. He left the shores of this country and went to the U.S.
Romeo was knowledgeable, very responsible, knowledgeable about the craft or crafts, from every aspect, from the bridge to the engine room, the hull, the interior of the vessel. We went through all these things together, and I was impressed.
It wasn't an instant, say, friendship, if you like it. I kept meeting him, and he kept meeting me, and we kept talking. And then, of course, I went home and met his family. And then, eventually, we went to Nigeria together. He had a business over there, and I went over there to teach the Maori masters in Nigeria. But really the main reason was because they were never recognized as seamen because they were kept down. They needed some form of certification to prove what they could do and do it well. So that was the idea, was to establish a company that had qualified Maori masters for the Nigerian coast.
There's a tugboat. They call them escort tugs. There are two of them. One on the other side, the one on this side. They follow
all the way on the channel till we get to the bed. Why they're doing that is that in case if we have engine failure or the rudder, then they give you assistance, tow we to a safety zone so that we won't run into the rocks and spill over here.
He was working in a company at Galveston called Pelican Offshore. And he told me on his time off, he works 3 weeks in, 2 weeks off. And that 2 weeks, he wanted to go to Nigeria. And he went, go do things, and he'd be able to come back in that 2 weeks. And then he waited till another time and want to go back again. And I said, well, do you think you're going to be back in this 2 weeks that you've been off? He said, well, I will be back, but if I don't come back, I'll find a way. And I said, well, what about your job? He said that you have a job, even if not this one, I'll get another one. But I said, what are we going to do financially if you don't come back and do the job you're doing? He said, don't worry. And the third time that he went, he didn't come back the time we're supposed to come back. His boss called and asked of him, see where he was, and I told him he went out of the country, that he's not back yet. And then he told me that, can I pass a message to him? I said, sure. And he said to let him know that this is his boss, that he have as amount of days, maybe 2 or 3 days to report back to work. If not, he won't longer have a job. So I call him immediately and tell him that, look, this is what your boss said. So don't worry about it. I'll make it. If I don't make it, don't worry, I'll get a job. So he didn't make it back. So he lose that job.
Romeo's initial maritime business venture was a joint operation with Mike Lely Marine Limited. He understood the first thing he needed to conduct any type of quality maritime work was seaworthy vessels. Unfortunately, the selection of vessels in Nigeria was either not up to par or extremely overpriced. This took Romeo to the Caribbean island of Trinidad, a place where he sailed many times before. There, not only did he find seaworthy vessels, he found qualified seafarers whom he trusted to assist him in sailing ships to Nigeria.
The object of the job we had for was to take a vessel from Chagaramas, Trinidad, to Lagos, Nigeria. And upon that journey, we departed Trinidad on the 19th of July 2009 to head to Lagos, Nigeria. Upon the journey, on the 6th day, we had the engineer, which is Trinidad, and
the engineer on board, I don't know if he had turned crazy or what, but took up an axe and ordered me to turn the boat around and take him to Brazil and all that. That was an experience where I would never forget. The guy wanted to kill me since if I didn't do as he said. The crew was scared. He shut the engines down in the middle of the ocean.
When Madman shut down the boat, well, I really get frantic. I say, if it's corned beef, I want to take all the corned beef. But just get the engine start back. I say, because I have my life in Trinidad. I have my children, I have my grandchildren. You understand? And I need to get back home safe.
Romeo personally had to talk the disgruntled employee down over the satellite phone. His ability to lead was a force to reckon with, even without his physical presence. His quick thinking and directions ensured the captain was not only able to restore order, but get the crew safely to Nigeria. There is a certain amount of beauty embedded in the struggle. It's an unintentional byproduct of life persevering against all odds. Every peak and valley of this existence is like a perfectly timed instrument in an orchestra. Alone, it holds very little meaning, but once combined, it is a masterpiece. Nigeria is one of the world's greatest symphonies. It's an exquisite blend of triumph and tragedy that plays a melody too rich to fully explain. Nowhere is this eclectic culture more apparent than the markets of Lagos. Within these confines of commerce, one can find anything from meats, beautiful fabrics, to more unconventional items. It is a blend of personalities, experiences, dialects, and ambitions. There are around 28 independent markets in Lagos alone. Each has its own unique flavor. An average trip to the market may seem harmless, but one would definitely need a guide if not already familiar with the terrain. As soon as you enter, your senses are immediately assaulted by the unmistakable vibrance of life. The eyes pick up the unimaginable amount of people and goods. Then the eardrums fill with several different languages, musical melodies, and constant traffic sounds. Finally, the feeling of the radiant heat and the faint touch of millions of bodies surrounding you brings the experience to life. Balogun Market, which is the largest in Lagos and quite possibly the largest in West Africa, does not disappoint. Sellers bring goods from all around the world and line the streets competing for prospective buyers. Modern supermarkets have gained popularity, but they will never fully replace these traditional hubs of humanity. While Romeo was very proud of what he had accomplished with Mike Lely, the relationship came to an end due to mismanaged funds by unscrupulous partners and his inability to convince other managing members to expand their ambitions. Not to be deterred, Romeo set off alone to pursue the largest entrepreneurial endeavor of his life, Global West Limited. He saw millions of dollars in revenue Nigeria was missing out on due to improper management of outgoing and ingoing vessels. The knowledge of how things should work came from his tenure in the U.S. The United States Coast Guard had an excellent model of how the waterways should be policed, and Romeo admired it. He knew there was a great need for a Coast Guard-like entity that would not bow to corruption. If granted the contract, he could also create revenue by accurately documenting ships that entered and making sure they were paying the appropriate rates established by Nigerian maritime law. Romeo used state-of-the-art equipment and had an exceptional talent pool if he drew people to draw from. They were so successful at their initial mission that they expanded into the realm of handling Nigeria's rampant piracy and illegal pipeline tapping problems, which was no easy task. The incredible success of Global West's mission did not go unnoticed. Many praised its positive impact, yet some labeled this company as a meddling force that curtailed illegitimate means of making money. The government hired Global West to clean up the Nigerian waterways, but also made a large amount of money from illegal payoffs to allow corrupt action to continue. Romeo's unwavering ability to compromise with unscrupulous people soon became a liability. His presence impeded a large amount of revenue from reaching the wrong hands, but once he was gone, it was a free-for-all. NAMASA, which was a floundering branch of Nigerian government before Global West's partnership, is now suddenly one of the more lucrative arms in waterway safety. If one were to Google Global West Vessel Specialists Limited, you'll find an array of negative stories. Some true, some exaggerated, and some yet to be fully exposed. Nigeria cannot survive if every aspect of it can be sold to the highest bidder, and Romeo knew this. Sadly, he was one of the few that believed this, and with his passing, the company he created has fallen in line with every other entity in Nigeria. Money has replaced morality. Profit has replaced integrity, and material gain has replaced common sense.
Opportunity starts, and you can't give it away. When Romeo started his own company in Nigeria, we all came here for opportunity. And if he has it, you got to make use of it. I was so impressed. He started a company back home. And I was so glad for him to start a company. Just like we all came here, achieve an objective, and go back home and expose it. Since he went home and have his own company, I was very proud of him.
When my dad called me and he told me, I need you out here in Nigeria. He had a plan for every one of his children. He had me take deep sea diving and underwater welding classes. I graduated, and the next step in that plan was to go to Nigeria.
The mission of Global West was purely defined by the founder. And I will put in this form. The founder makes me understand that the marine activities in Nigerian water are not standardized compared to international, the way it is stated in international organization. So with his experience in international operation, he wants the Nigeria maritime industry to be standardized. And that was his vision. And for that reason, he came to make sure that every maritime operation in Nigeria is done in accordance with the standard order worldwide, which is regulated by IMO, which is International Maritime Organization. That is his vision. Not cutting corners. The way it is set to be done, that's how it should be carried out. That is his vision. And for the visionary to carry out standardization on the maritime industry, it has to partner with NIMASA. So carrying out this vision is partnering with NIMASA. That's how this vision is carried out, to make sure that the standard way of carrying out the maritime activities, both internationally and locally, is same. That's brought about the partnership with NIMASA.
Had it been, of course it had to be Nigeria because we had the connections there, but had it been any other country in Africa, I think we'd both be multimillionaires by now. The combination of the two of us, yeah. But because it was Nigeria, that gave us the start, of course, but it was so difficult. So we're both poor men now, yeah.
To the surprise of my people, they have enemies have put systems in place to marginalize them, put them out of team, make their resources accessible, and make it difficult for them to access their resources.
I think the government should do some more. Yeah, they should do for the poor people, like on the river bank, like a papa and all them thing. They should do more for them. Yeah. They should try that. And they must try too because they have so much resources too with the health care. They have to pay. They could do that free for them.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
There's a lot of children. We're talking about children, not big people. You know, that's suffering. Try to help them a little more. And try not to help themselves.
Every human rights law and regulation is being broken in that place. I mean, I'm not saying that everyone is bad, but there are very few goods.
Basically, who you know, what you know. You don't walk into Nigeria with a grand business plan and tell them how to do it and who's going to make the profit. That doesn't work that way. It works. You have to be part of the family. You have to be in the politics. You have to be part of the Navy, the Army, everybody, so that you can survive in Nigeria.
Those who live in Nigeria will be the first to tell you that the word corrupt should not be a lone adjective used to describe their great land. However, corruption has held a place in its history and still has a stronghold on the country to date. It is naive to believe there isn't some level of corruption in every country on this planet. Yet, it's paradoxical when a nation holds more than enough resources to uplift the standard of living of all its citizens and does not. Corruption isn't a fringe theory here. It's an archaic means of survival in a nation that should be far past its self-imposed chokehold. The line of right and wrong blurred, and Romeo began to sense that his presence wasn't wanted on either side of the battle. Despite being pressured to conform and receiving constant death threats wanting him to give up his efforts entirely, he pushed on, almost as if he didn't fully believe how far his own people would go to continue making money.
So I answered the phone and it was a family member. He said he was at my door. I said, "Oh, you are here? What's going on?" He said, "Oh, I was passing by your area, so I decided to stop and say hello." So I said, "Okay, give me a second, I'll come in to open the door." So I came out and opened the door. True, that was him. And then I let him in. We sat down at the front, told him to sit down, and asked of his family how everyone was doing. Is everyone fine? And there was one of my nephew that was from Nigeria going to UT High school, was here with me that night. He spent the night at my house. So when I sat down with my family member at the front of the living room, and I kind of looking at him, it seems like something is not right, but I couldn't figure out what was wrong. So I kept asking him, "Is everybody okay? Is everything going all right? How is your job? How life?" We was just talking. He said, "Everything is going fine." And then he said, "Well, I came for something." I said, "What is it? What did you come here for?" He said that something happened. I said, "What happened?" And he said that your husband had an accident. I said, "Oh my God, what happened to him? Did he die? Did they shot him? What's wrong? Is he okay?" So I lost it at that moment.
The night before, he said that he was going offshore for 3 days. So, of course, I started packing because we went everywhere together. And he told me when I was midway through packing, he said, "Don't worry, you're going to stay here. You know, you don't have your sea legs all the way under you. So I'm just going to go and do this, come back, and then the next trip we can go together." And me not thinking, I was just like, "Hey, vacation, why not?" So we went to the office where we, the water side where we take off, go offshore, and we sat down with some of the elders that worked with him, and we drank, we were talking, we all drank. Me and my dad drank from the same cup. We talked, laughed, had a good time, and he got on the boat. He got on the vessel. He gave me some money, said, "Take care of the house." So it's no problem. I turned around, and I had a funny thought in my head. I just thought, What if this is the last time I see my dad? And I don't know where that ever came from. I never had that kind of thought ever in my life, but it just, something said, what if I never see him again? So I turned around and I waved him off. And I could see his boat going out far, probably about a mile off. And the whole time he was looking at me waving off, and I was waving him off. And that was the last time I saw him alive.
How did it happen exactly? I mean, at that moment in time, I mean, they didn't even have a full story yet. I mean, these people were so negligent. I use the word negligent because this man was not only a captain, he was the CEO of his company, he was the head of a community. So when that kind of person dies, you can't just die and they're like, okay, what happened, and you let it go. I mean, there has to be a formal investigation. Things have to be put in place. What really happened? If it was an accident, it was an accident. If it was on purpose, let's find out.
First, I don't even believe it. Romeo is a pilot. He has been there for so many years. And sometimes this guy is swimming with shark. People don't believe it. And I heard his death, that Romeo got lost in the water. We all came from a waterland area. We live in the sea, just like Galveston. We swim for miles. And when I heard that, I thought it was a joke. But the next day, the same thing. Then I called back home. I said, exactly what happened?
It was murder. Plain and simple. Romeo was a seaman. He could survive anywhere. He has done in the past with me in the Gulf of Mexico. And we've been through some bad weather, some terrible times. But to say that happened in Nigeria and he drowned, that's rubbish.
What happened to Romeo, my husband? I wish I knew what happened, but I don't know. And I can't say what happened. All I was told, they had an accident and he fell in the water. He drowned. It is hard for me to believe it, but Romeo is not longer here to tell me what really happened that day. So I don't know. I would really like to know what really happened that take his life. But that's one thing I would like to know before it will be time for me to leave. But I'm hoping someday, somewhere, someplace I'll get the answer. But for now, I don't know what happened that very day. And that very day, which was Monday, I left to Nigeria. When I leave Houston to Nigeria Monday, I get to Nigeria on Tuesday. And from that Tuesday evening I get to Nigeria, I had to go to my state, which is Delta State, from another plane to that place. When I get there, that's when I find out that they found him and he has passed. He drowned.
The most repeated report of what happened on the night of August 7th, 2012 starts very mildly. Captain Romeo was aboard the Master Barutu, a state-of-the-art vessel with a bulletproof hull. They were patrolling just off the coast of Nigeria when they saw a self-propelled barge being circled by a smaller craft. Romeo ordered the crew to head over and investigate. As soon as they pulled close enough to the smaller vessel, It let out a series of shots in their direction. The shots were unable to penetrate the bulletproof hull, so they pressed on. But before they knew it, a large caliber gun began firing at them from the barge.
So they were chasing the little craft that was patrolling around, while there was several gunshots from the self-propelled barge. So at a point, they wanted to eat the craft to sink it. So in the process, the shooting was just too much. So they were hacks. They advised themselves to retrieve. So there they retrieved. So as they were about to enter the Escravos entrance, there they said they ran into the wreck because it was on high tide. So while they were on the wreck, they came out that they should assist to bring down the boat from the wreck. There, according to their reports, my boss came out. He was standing on the side of the boat and was pushing the wreck. There suddenly a wave came and hit the boat from the side, and they fell overboard. Not just him, the captain of the vessel named Henry too fell overboard from the stern. So the people that was with Henry threw life ring for him to bring him on board. But there was one military man standing with my boss, and the military man ran in calling the other people that they should come and help, that Captain Romeo is in the water. In the process, according to their report, another wave hit them again. There it took the boat from the side where it wrecked to the other side. There they lost sight on Captain Romeo. And later they were looking for him. They couldn't find it. That was their report. But from all this, I still don't believe the report, because I don't believe reports of men. I only believe the reports of God.
My mother would tell me stories about my grandmother fishing late at night on the river. In those days, few pilots would dare guide the large container ships through the narrow waterways at night. Romeo was one of those brave few. Every village had its own foghorn signal for when the pilots returned, and when my grandmother would hear those two long bellows, followed closely by a short blast at that hour of the night, she knew Romeo had made it back. He was barely 20, but he piloted the massive vessels like a seasoned vet with little more than skill and instinct to the dock at the dead of night. It's tragically ironic. 30 years later, this same man, with far more experience and skill, would die at the mouth of that same river on a craft that possessed one of the best maritime navigation systems that money could buy.
A man like Romeo don't just fall down and die. That don't happen. I mean, fall overboard in water. Romeo is a strong, healthy young man. And that, I mean, I hearing that alone, like I said, mysterious. I can't believe that he died with an accident, as it's been explained, as being simple. I just can't swallow that.
Anytime I get to thinking about it too much, of course, I get angry. The sadness part lasted about a couple of days, cried when I heard it. But after that, it was just anger. White, hot anger. And it's the person that I've known since birth. And you just telling me that he died like that? I never get to see him again, never get to laugh. I can't, I just feel like I can't let it go. Somebody has to be brought to justice for this.
I don't know this true story because so many people claim it's an accident, it's pirates. I don't know what to do. If you look at CNN, you look at the news, Boko Haram, sea pirates, they kidnap boats, kidnap people for ransom. So till today, the only news I got that is concrete from his senior brother who took over his company, that it was an accident. So, but I don't buy it that much. I thought he's a pirate. Jealousy. Jealous.
Romeo is my junior brother. We have the same father, but different mother. We live as good brothers and friends.
What is your current title at Global West now?
I am the managing director right now.
What does the managing director do? What are his duties?
Managing director oversees all the operations of Global West.
How would you describe the general feeling when Romeo passed?
It was terrible. I think those were my worst days, I think. As my junior brother, I don't think anybody, any senior who want to bury his junior brother, but things happened. So as he died, I think the company is still moving on, and we're happy that the company is still here.
They say time reveals all. So what has time revealed since Romeo's passing in 2012 and Winford taking control of his company? From sworn testimony from Winford himself and banking transactions retrieved by Nigeria's Economic and Financial Crimes Commission, we see that not only was Winford mismanaging money, but he was actively trying to restructure the company in order to remove any remnants of Romeo and stop his family from being compensated fairly. In 2012, Romeo formed Molecular Power Systems as a branch of Global West, allotting equal shares of 300,000 naira to two other partners. In June of 2013, after Romeo's death, Winford illegally changed shares of Molecular Power Systems, putting himself as one of the majority shareholders and leaving the estate of Romeo with 1% of the company. In January of 2014, the first payment to Molecular Power Systems of $4.2 million was made. Winford paid Romeo's estate less than 1% of the proceeds, never disclosing any further payments to the company. From 2013 through 2015, Winford transferred $580,000 to his accounts in the United States. From 2013 through 2014, Winford withdrew over $2.1 million in cash from the Global West company accounts. Between April and May of 2015, Winford transferred over $508,000 to Amos, the Global West accountant. Between April and June of 2015, Winford authorized 22 transfers of 395 million naira, equivalent to $1.1 million, to an unknown source labeled various beneficiaries on bank statements. The exact extent of how much money Winford stole is difficult to calculate since he refuses to hand over bank statements, but best guess show that over $100 million was paid to Global West, and he has misappropriated or hidden nearly all of it. The estate of the man who founded Global West and still holds majority shareholdings has received less than 1% of its profits to date. We may not know who was responsible for Romeo's death, but we know who had the motive and who has been made rich from his passing. My brother Zion and I demanded that an autopsy be done and an official police report made regarding his death. It took 3 weeks before we were able to see the corpse of our father. He was kept in a morgue at the hospital, which stood as an inadequate medical facility. His body had decomposed so badly that I could smell him as I walked through the hallways. The leading doctor had to pour bleach on the floor in an attempt to diminish the odor. He sawed my father's chest and skull open like a piece of wood. What remained wasn't the jovial man that lifted me in the air when I was a child, or the man who inspired me to push myself to the limit. In the end, the doctor stated there was no blunt force trauma to the head or chest, and his cause of death was drowning. This conclusion didn't match eyewitness accounts, or even make logical sense. How could this experienced captain hit the water and die without attempting to save himself? The elders in Romeo's village decided that he was too important of a figure to leave his funeral arrangements in the hands of his family. Due to this, we spent time we shouldn't have on excessive mourning. In the end, they allowed us to bury him in the village where his father was from, which had always been his wish. From there, they did what they wanted. I asked for the casket not to be opened, to spare my mother from pain, but the elders elected to do so anyway. It was clear they believed Romeo belonged to the Ijo people in life and in death. They carried on in whatever fashion they saw fit, while we just stood by and watched. Per tradition, when an Ijo person dies, they are to be buried next to their house in the village. Romeo never had time to build any home for himself, so a makeshift one was quickly erected before his funeral, with the promise of completion soon after he was buried. 2 years later, this champion, father, leader, husband, and martyr still lies in an unfinished grave. Mason men and bricklayers work on the grounds as if he just passed away yesterday.
You like red color, but I'm sorry, I don't have no red.
It makes one wonder how much of this culture is real and how much is used only when convenient. My father wouldn't have cared about what his gravesite looked like. But what do I tell my younger siblings when the final resting place of their father looks like a never-ending construction site? What will I tell my children about who their people are and where they're from when they see this? It's hard to look at all this and push those last painful thoughts from my mind. But there really is no time to dwell on the anguish. There's still much work left to do. I've been here too many times and watched my mother shed far too many tears to find any comfort in coming to this place. It represents nothing more to me than the inadequacy of man. Romeo's true final resting place is in the hearts and minds of the people who loved him. What exists here is just a poor attempt for some to massage the guilt that they hold.
Romeo death make us backward in Vanuatu as a whole, even in Nigeria as a whole. And I don't think anybody can replace Romeo, because I know he was coming for good.
Every day, sometime I pray. If it's this caused by jealous and people kill them, he should hunt every one of them down, even though they are pirates. Hunt every one of them. If he has an opportunity, kill every one of them. That is what I can tell him. May his soul rest in peace.
It's really sad. To even hear that, what happened to that guy. I mean, I can't, every time I go into the detail, it's not something that I can just get over like that. You're such a friend to me.
It is important for the world to know that ultimately, this dream was bigger than any one man's life, and its architect only used his occupational endeavor as a vehicle for greater change. Romeo's absence has allowed those inspired by greed to temporarily dictate the climate of Nigeria. However, his legacy and inspiration is slowly cultivating the minds of whom also seek to be on the right side of history, not only to make a difference within Nigeria, but around the world.
If he was here right now, alive, I would tell him, hey, Dad, you fought the good fight. They on their own now. Let's go home. You know, your wife needs you. Your youngest son, he doesn't even have enough memories of the good days, so you need to go ahead and be with him. But if I could just talk to him and just get one chance to talk to him, and then he'll be gone again, I'll just tell him thanks for everything. He made us tough. He made us able to handle any challenge that the world threw at us. And not everybody is able to say stuff like that about their father. Luckily, we had a good one.
Well, if Mr. Romeo was here now, the first thing I asked him, what did this have for us? Which is work-wise.
Jelly, please take care. Look at my wife. You know that girl is something else. And help her and look over my kids. That's what I would say.
Where's the next boat? We need to take another trip, but not the asshole we was with. But then again, I turned 60 years on the 17th of July, so I'm too old now to go back on a boat. But I enjoyed the moment that I left Shagaramas to Nigeria. I enjoy it. Okay. Yeah.
Define the justice we are working for, we are fighting for our people in terms of the word of God, not in terms of this world, so that the burden of the struggle will be carried by God, not by us. That I would love to share with him.
Romeo, you're around next.
The price of this particular dream, my father's dream, was high. Death is ultimate. It's devastating. It's real. But there are things in this life past death that some people shouldn't ever experience. Now you can imagine that my dad did all of these things, but what did it create? It created an avenue for many people. It created a resource. It created an abundance for many people, which is great. It also created envy. It also created hatred. It created jealousy. It created a gap in people. So when he died, one would think that was the ultimate price. That was it. He paid it. It's done. It's over. Suffering should be non-existent. But when he died, people took that opportunity to add to that price. They wanted to pile upon all their inadequacies, all their debts, all their feelings of I guess not having what Romeo had, or not being able to achieve what he achieved. They put that on top of his own death. And we experienced it as his family members. People that should have, could have done something, did nothing. And to this day, they're paying that price because their conscience will not let them rest. Romeo has died, his suffering is gone, but their suffering is just beginning because they know what they could have done, what they should have done, and they did nothing. So until the day that they leave this earth, they will pay for it too. That's the price of a dream.
Romeo, I love you. I will always love you. The children and I misses you. We all love you.
Keep playing. I'm not going Finish. Drop your rope inside. Drop one over.
Ayi mama pam je makanare. Ayi bitor faun makai prower. Ami ukuja ga tinga. Right my boss in them about room before me. You will know me by Romeo.
Sir, Romeo,